Hey, what's up? It's Spencer from Archspire, and we're hanging out here in Oakland. Well, I'll show you a gravity blast, or a butterfly roll. It's essentially when you come down, you get a hit, and when you come back up, you get your second hit. So you want to use the side of the snare as leverage, basically. I use a blast, I started using it about 3 years ago. I've been calling it a switch blast. I noticed a lot of people on the internet have started calling it now a switch blast as well. It's essentially, instead of one hand on the snare just blasting like a finger blast, for example, it's 4 hits with each hand. And you match each snare hit with a kick hit. So essentially what you're doing is by switching your hand that you're using for the blast, you're allowing your body to basically let the blood flow back into your arms. So what that does is it lets you pump up the tempos really fast, and you can hold them for much longer periods of time too. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the other hand you can use, sort of float around the kit. So and again, you're matching every snare hit with a kick hit. I play with my hip flexors, which I know is a little strange. Mostly single stroke. Some parts I do double stroke roll, but I found that I used to try to play swivel. Never got anywhere with it. Flat foot for a while. Never really got far with it, and I always ran into pain in my knees. So what I found worked for me was hiking my throne height up really high, moving my kick drums quite far away from me, almost going straight-legged, and using basically my hip flexors to push my legs down. And it let me A, conserve more energy so I could go for longer, and B, it got rid of all the pain that I was having in my knees. I'm pushing from here, essentially. So my leg is almost locked. You let it float a little bit, but I'm essentially pushing from my hips. It's almost like running in a weird downward shape. It's sort of how I think of it in my head.
Yeah.
I used to play with my heel up, using my whole leg, and it worked for a while. But after playing a set an hour long, you just get so exhausted and out of breath. So this technique allowed me to just relax these muscles and just use my hips. And this is obviously a much larger muscle group up here, so you can get more power out of it.
I noticed you have your hi-hat kind of angled away from you, like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like the sizzle of it. It didn't quite decay the same when I had it straight. So I angled it up, and also it raised it. I have this weird custom arm I've built here, so that my hi-hat's on my rack, and it's a little bit tricky to get the height up higher too. So this gave me the advantage of tilting it, raising it up for me. I try to stick to the rule where you don't really want too much of your drum kit much higher than your heart, because for speed endurance playing, if you have your arms up higher than your heart, you have to think your heart has to work so much more to pump the blood into your arms. So as a general rule, I just kind of lowered everything. I have these two guys that are a little bit higher, but all the toms way down, all my bells way down, and that allowed me to conserve a lot of energy, so I could play faster for longer. Right before we recorded this album, I got this kit from Pearl. I guess it took about 7 months to make because I wanted the custom finish on it.
What kind of kit is it?
It's a Pearl Reference Pure. Yeah, beautiful kit, gold finish, matte black, the gold hardware. So next, I'd like to get like a gold rack. See if Pearl will make that for me. So triggers do a few things. They change the nature of of the drum you're playing. So I trigger my kicks, and so basically you're playing a different instrument. It's almost the difference between playing an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar. There's techniques you can do on an electric guitar, say for example like picking really, sweeping really fast. In an acoustic guitar that would get sort of buried, but because the pickups are electric, it amplifies everything, makes it all about the same volume. So it's the same thing with the triggers. You change the nature of the bass drum, so you change the nature of the techniques you use to do it. So, for example, doing double stroke roll, getting that second hit on an acoustic setup, you would never hear that second hit. But on the trigger setup, it'll fire when you do hit it. So you have to concentrate so much on lining those second hits up perfectly for the rolls to be smooth, right? Right, left, right, left.
Do you quantize anything when you use triggers?
No quantizing, no. And it just, what it does is it makes your bass drums way more naked, like way more obvious to everybody watching you play. If you're off, everybody in the room knows you're off. Where if you're playing an acoustic kit, especially for the faster stuff, it's quite, it's more of a dirty sound. It's not quite so accurate sounding, and you can get away with a lot more mistakes. So triggers are brutally honest.
Do you use triggers only on your kicks?
I use them only on my bass drums, yeah. And a really big part of the classic death metal sound is triggered kicks. So, you know, back in the day they used to add the trigger to help the players who were bumping up the tempos, going faster and faster. But then it evolved and just became part of the genre. And now I don't actually even want any acoustic sound of my kick drums. I fill them with pillows and blankets so that I don't get any false triggering, and keep them as quiet as possible and just totally play off the trigger. So they're essentially very expensive paperweights.